This is the 23 News Update at 10.
New results from a toxicology report reveal more than double the average fatal amount of cocaine in the system of 33-year-old Lamar Bell, the Rockford man who died the same night he was pulled over on July 17th. Illinois State Police say at least 40 clear plastic bags were found during his autopsy. 23 News reporter Jake Pearson watched 50 minutes of new body cam footage released by Illinois State Police today and talks to medical professionals who say this is the most cocaine they have ever seen in a human body.
I'm holding a single dose of Narcan, which has the power to reverse an opioid drug overdose. Unfortunately, Narcan won't have an effect on cocaine, and no alternatives exist to reverse an overdose. The following video could be disturbing to some viewers.
Call the ambulance.
Why do you need an
Hey,
ambulance?
I saw some cocaine in a lot. Call the ambulance. No, I'm just playing.
Body camera footage released today by Illinois State Police shows Lamar Bell shouting for an ambulance after he swallowed at least 40 clear plastic bags of a chunky substance, according to a new toxicology report.
How much was in there?
What you mean, like 3 bags? I just bought.
Health professionals say a cocaine overdose can cause a wide range of ailments, including death.
Cocaine is a stimulant, so you can think of it as any other stimulant, and even think something as simple as caffeine. It's going to cause seizures in severe overdoses, severe high blood pressure, hypertension that can result in stroke.
Come on, my heart! Come on, my heart! I swear to God!
According to toxicology reports, Bell had 9,300 nanograms per milliliter of cocaine in his body. That's more than double the average blood cocaine concentration level in 37 cocaine-related deaths in Illinois this year.
Ah, call the ambulance! I swear to God, this... Call the ambulance. That's all right.
Kevin Rinn works for the University of Illinois College of Pharmacy. He says when someone overdoses on cocaine, it can be difficult to save their life.
You pretty much treat all the symptoms that occur. So if they start to develop seizures, we treat the seizures with medication and so on down the line. So unfortunately, there's not a specific antidote per se that reverses it right away, like we have Narcan for opiates.
Lamar Bell was stopped by Illinois State Police just before 8 p.m. on July 17th after a trooper saw what he believed to be a drug deal at a nearby gas station. He was pronounced dead at a local hospital later that evening.
Thank you, Jake. And Illinois State Police released the body cam footage earlier today, citing their commitment to integrity and public transparency. An autopsy also shows there was no traumatic injury to Bell.